Thank you, everyone. Is this how do I sound? Everything good? Thanks for coming out and joining our session today. I'm Ken Anderson. I'm a director of engineering. I run a program for Adobe where we are really responsible for all of the engineering automation and tools to support Adobe's FinOps program.
I'm Matthew Kruse. I work for Ken, and I support all of Ken's engineering teams in those efforts.
As far as the agenda today, our plan is to give you a really high-level flyover of our program, share a little bit about our journey, to get to the point that we're doing the automation that we are, talk a little bit about our approach to how we think about creating automation policies, some of the architecture considerations that went into us deciding to build versus buy, and then share some examples about how we visualize and show multi-cloud waste opportunities back to our business units. And then we're really going to close with a lessons learned. What do we think's gone well? What do we think went poorly? And then selfishly, I'm hoping there's two people in the audience right now. Hopefully there's somebody that this is a new journey for them, and we have an opportunity to partner and help you out. And hopefully there's somebody here that knows a lot more than us and can help us where we're at right now. So if you think you're one of those two people, at the end of the session, come up and talk to us. So we thought we'd first start and talk a little bit about how we went from automating on one cloud account to 10,000 cloud accounts. And this started in 2018. We were a team of 3, and we weren't thinking about FinOps. We weren't thinking about cloud efficiency. In fact, we were completely, our charter was to be a database services team. We're going to be database architects helping product teams with performance issues. And we only had one project that we worked on. We got brought in to help one of our products with RDS scaling challenges. They had a fleet of about 5,000 instances, and they were having hotspots that their automation wasn't catching. So we got brought on to help kind of build monitoring and alerting for that. What we found was, it was also the first time we'd ever worked in the cloud. And we were really impressed at the cloud automation, or the cloud formation, and the available KPIs that were there for AWS. And sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. I don't normally get nervous. The performance telemetry was just there and it was available for us. And what we saw was an ability to automate things in a way that we never had before. All of the basic operations were behind an API. And so pretty quickly, we were able to... You're
doing great.
I'm sorry. We were able to basically create an automated solution to find and make recommendations on about 300 databases that we felt like were significantly at risk of having a performance problem. And we came back and we made a pitch to the business, and what we said to them was, hey, look, let's just upsize these right now. Let's make them 2 times bigger. And from there, we'll take some time to go through and do the query performance tuning automation. As I think we've all found, is that the cloud makes it really easy for us to spend money, especially by throwing more hardware at the problem. And this product had some budget constraints around that, and leadership didn't really like our pitch to just upsize 300 really large databases to really, really large databases. So we went back and we did some brainstorming, and what we said is, hey, look, let's flip our algorithm on its head. Let's look at the underutilized databases in the environment. Then let's use all of the APIs and administrative commands to basically balance out the clusters for us. I won't lie, it was a hard pitch to get this past leadership. We did it that year, and we had this have your cake and eat it too moment. We basically obliterated all of the database performance issues through this right sizing, and we saved the company about $4.5 million on the run rate. And so it was a huge win. Thank you. At the end of that, we basically said, forget doing database architecture. Let's do cloud efficiency and automation. There's a huge opportunity here. And so going into 2019, we just kind of followed the performance metrics. We said, hey, look, if the databases are idle, I bet you the compute's idle. So we looked, and there was a lot of opportunity in EC2 right sizing. So we started working on that. We saw opportunities to do EBS cleanup, snapshot retention. And as we kind of got to the midpoint in the year, we had a handful of scripts that we could run on a cloud account and drive some really big savings opportunities. So we said, hey, is this a problem with one account? I don't know. Are they an outlier, or is it a common problem? I think today we know that this is a more common problem. But basically, we reached out to the top 5 accounts, top 15, top 20, and we did a very opt-in approach. We said, hey, can we run this on your environment? Can we find savings opportunities for you? And we built some really simple reporting around this. There were trust issues. A lot of people don't like you. Engineers and operation teams who've never met you before, they don't like when you're poking around in their account. They don't like giving you admin access. But we worked through it. At the end of the year, we'd save the company about another $8 million. Going to 2020, and I think really driven by the success of the program, we got leadership support to expand it out across the entire business unit. And so that we grew to about 500 accounts we were managing. And that's where we did our first fully automated cleanup policy. And it was for something really simple. It's unattached EBS volumes. Here we found we couldn't scale to sit down and ask every team for permission. So with leadership support, we basically moved into an opt-out model. We'd communicate to teams and say, on this date, we're applying this policy. Here's how you don't get the policy applied to your account. Let us know. And again, it was a very exciting year. There's a little bit of a jump here in overall team size and going to 10,000 accounts. But there were maybe 2 big events that happened in 2021. We had a company-wide reorg that brought together a bunch of small engineering teams to really create groups that were working in a similar space, get those all under one leadership, under one program, and get them aligned. The other piece, and really kind of the culture change that was interesting, we had a big problem happen in 2021. We were rolling out an S3 automation policy across the company. It was a 2-quarter-long plan. Basically, we're going to do pre-prod accounts, low-risk accounts, then move to production, give everybody notification and onboarding. And like every bug, it was a perfect storm. We released it to all of the accounts in one shot. And so it's the first time in my career I've been in trouble on the same issue, both for going too slow and for going too fast. The going too fast was I had to sit down and they said, Ken, how did this happen? How are we going to make sure it never happens again? That's fine. We worked through it. Then the savings started rolling in from the policy, and what we found out was, of the several thousand account owners, we only had 2 people reach out to us and ask about it. That policy offset about $5 million in S3 spend. So the next meeting I had with leadership was, hey Ken, why were we taking 2 quarters to roll this out when it's something that could have been done in an afternoon? But for us, this was a big win because it was clear that the culture had shifted. Teams, we built more trust. There's less hesitation there. And so as it stands today, we're now moving into an approach where we are doing an exception-based policy rollout. VPs have to basically approve the exception. Engineering teams have to give a justification. Next slide. While this has changed in how we think about rolling out the policies and working with teams, our approach to identifying efficiency opportunities has not changed. We start by reverse engineering the bill. Our thought is really, our biggest savings opportunities are where we spend the most money. And so we really prioritize the bill and spend, and we work our way down. Once we pick a category we want to look into, we go out and we see if we can get utilization metrics to see if we can identify if the resource is idle or underutilized. We also pull in all the configuration metadata. From there, we review published best practices, both from the cloud providers and from the tech sphere. And then we take the potential savings from that and we put it into a risk and rewards model, which Matthew will talk about in a moment. Then we go through and review with solution architects, both with cloud providers and within our teams. And if the stars align on all of those things, we go ahead and execute.
So I'm going to pick up here and talk a little bit more about how we think about waste cleanup opportunities as we investigate them and learn more about them. So we've kind of got a matrix here. We've got opportunity. Any opportunity out there can either be a low savings opportunity or a high savings opportunity. And then on the risk side, some things like you can't roll back. Those are challenging to automate at a company-wide scale. Also, sometimes you need application-specific knowledge to go in there. Like some teams are going to be pretty sensitive if I go in there and change their autoscale group or modify their EC2 instance. So we kind of think about it in these 4 quadrants. The first is our backlog quadrant. So these things are likely very easy to automate, but the savings just aren't there, either because we don't use it or we're really efficient in that resource space. So typically we just put these in the backlog and say, we'll think about this in a couple years. Maybe the landscape will change, maybe it won't, but they're just not worth our engineering effort and investment right now. Our next quadrant is our automate quadrant. So these are things that we believe from a risk profile are safe to automate and the savings are really high. So these are the things our team is going to concentrate on from an automation point of view, Adobe-wide, because they're going to give us the most monetary savings for our engineering investment in those spaces. Next up is our skip bucket. So these things are things that are really difficult to automate, don't have a clear rollback strategy. We need to engage with the owning engineering team, and our reward for doing all that work is going to be minimal. So these are things we just elect to skip. And our last group is our partner group, and these things are likely very difficult to some degree to automate. Think migrating from x86 to ARM. Like you can't, we as the Adobe automation team can't just go in there and change it because we're going to break stuff. But if we put them in touch with our partner group, we have a team of engineers that are experts in that space and can go out and assist and give additional engineering resources to the owning engineering team and help them drive those waste savings. So as we're starting to migrate from basically serial scripts that we initially wrote and start to kind of think about a centralized platform to kind of do all this, we had some requirements that we kind of thought about that were really important to us. So one, we needed multi-cloud support. Adobe uses all the clouds, so our tool has to support all the clouds. Second, we need the ability to scale to thousands of public cloud accounts. It's a lot different when we were running this on 10 accounts, and it got a little different when we went up to 100, and we had to completely change our approach when we got to the tens of thousands. Thirdly, we needed the ability to scale to the needs of exceptionally large public cloud accounts. We've got public cloud accounts where 1 out of 10 times when we make an API request, it fails.
Rate limiting.
We hop into the console, and guess what happens when we navigate the console? Nothing works, nothing loads. It might load if you wait 10 minutes, but it's a pretty terrible UI experience. So we needed the tool to be able to deal with the limitations of the cloud provider. And then finally, we needed this platform to meet the needs of Adobe's credential access. We weren't going to change our approach to credential access to meet the needs of the tool. Our security team has a very opinionated approach on that, and they weren't going to change. So we kind of considered open source tools, we considered vendors, and we considered building it ourselves. So the first question we kind of asked ourselves was, can I customize the platform to our needs? And what I mean by that is, let's say AWS decides to release GP4 tomorrow. How quickly can I go out there and start automating and using that? Can I modify the platform to do it? Do I have to wait for the vendor to do it? Or do I have to wait for the open source tool to even look at my PR? Next is, can I create my own custom policies in the tool that I chose? And what I kind of mean by that is, let's say I've got a policy around disk cleanup when it's orphaned. For the most part, like most of our teams, they'd be fine with 30 days. But we have some very opinionated teams out there that they're going to say, due to our application requirements, we need that to be 90 days. So for situations like that, we need the tool to support those use cases. The next question we kind of asked ourselves is, does the vendor cut make sense in the short term? And often the answer was yes. The longer term was a little harder sell in many cases. And then we also kind of thought about what happens if we sign a contract with this vendor and then our cloud provider goes out and automates it away with a new feature, and we don't even need that cloud provider anymore, or that vendor option anymore. Like we're spending money on something we may not use anymore because the cloud providers made it obsolete. So that kind of wraps into the fourth point there. So how quickly, when the landscape changes out there, because it's going to, how quickly can we migrate from what we're currently doing to a better option? So I'm going to kind of gloss over the architecture summary because I don't think it's critically important what our technology choices were. We chose Docker, Python, MySQL, and Grafana simply because those are dominant technologies and there were things our team was already good at. So for the engineering teams out in the audience, I'd say pick what you're already good at. Like, you just need to integrate with the cloud provider's SDK. So whatever you're good at today, continue using that. The one thing that really did help us was Apache Airflow. We needed a framework for managing all these accounts, running all of our workflows, and we wanted to get out of the business of building our own, basically, platform. And by adopting Airflow, we got retries, we got state management, job tracking, performance metrics, scheduling, logging, a UI. We get all that for free, and because we got all that for free, we could simply focus on our business logic. And those things are what really drives the value. Like when we released our S3 intelligent tiering policy, or when we've got our orphaned resource detection tools out there and cleanup. So from an architecture point of view, my suggestion is pick what you're already good at and be aggressive in driving on the business logic to go out and reclaim those resources. So to kind of dive in a little deeper, when we're developing a new process from our engineering team, typically what we'll start doing is we'll go out and collect the data. And what I mean by collecting the data is if it's an EC2 instance, we'll collect the I/O, the CPU, the network, and understand what those metrics say about the resource in question. And once we've done that, we kind of pull that data together and try to evaluate it. And typically we have 3 answers we come to once we've done that evaluation. The first is the data says that we're using the resources efficiently, and there isn't a particular opportunity there. So typically we'll collect the data and just kind of stop on the automation at that point. We've got the automation to collect it, but it's not worth our time right now, or there's just not an opportunity. The second one is generally the most common one that we see today is there is an opportunity out there, but it's constrained to 1 or 2 teams. So we could go out and automate that solution away for the entire company, but really our time's better served just going out and talking with those teams individually and seeing what we can do at that level rather than us trying to automate it for everyone. And then the third category is we see this as a widespread problem company-wide, and it's something we can go out and automate. So depending on the outcome of that, many times like we come across orphan EBS volumes, and that's something every engineering team at Adobe does. And once we see those opportunities, we'll reach out to our cloud partners, and we'll typically we'll ask them to put us in touch with their experts in that space, and we have them validate and challenge our strategy. Do you think what we're doing is sane? Are there any pitfalls we should be aware of? What are our peers doing in this space? Can we talk to some of our peers to kind of understand what they did in that space? And if that all looks good, at that point, we'll actually modify resources in accounts I've never logged into, or anyone on the team. So we'll go out and delete an EBS volume, or we'll go out and change the size on a database instance.
So when it comes to that category of things where we're trying to partner with teams, a couple of the FinOps principles that I think are really important are this idea about making conscious trade-offs around decisions on cost, quality, and speed, and then really decentralizing decision-making around effective architectures of resource utilization. And so we have a lot of very detailed views of cloud savings opportunities where we can drill down, look at trends, resources over time, but we really focused into kind of answering what we feel like are these important 3 questions. What is your potential savings? Like, if you acted right now, how much money could you save over the next 12 months? And is that worth your time? The next thing was really we wanted to have a score that we could understand efficiency across different business units and product teams. We refer to this as waste as a percentage of spend, and it's a pretty simple calculation. We say how much money could you save versus how much money are you going to spend, divide those numbers together, and that's the waste percentage. We have a target across the business for teams to be at or below 10% waste. I highlighted these in red because we have some, hindsight thoughts after this, but we'll address that in a little bit. The next piece is really available actions. Like, how do we drill down and see the specific line item changes that a team should make in the account to drive those savings? One of the bigger challenges we faced on this next slide here is when we think about mapping to our business hierarchy. Adobe has many different business units, and we wanted to be able to view these savings opportunities at the company level, at the individual business units like Creative Cloud or Experience Cloud, an individual product within those, sub-services within those products, and then all of the public cloud accounts that make up the services that those products offer. On the next slide, here's actually an example of the dashboard. There's some data hidden here. I think legal would be concerned about me sharing certain numbers. But what I did is I filtered this down to a subset of accounts that I own. And the first thing that stands out is I have a $22,000 a year savings opportunity. Not huge, but compared to the amount of spend on the handful of accounts I've selected here, 33% of my spend is waste. Down below, we break that out. We've basically gone through a big exercise to normalize spend categories across the different public cloud providers. So I can quickly look through that and see my top savings opportunity right now is non-computerized. As I drill down on that even further, saying, hey, 33% waste is bad, it's an opportunity for my team to basically buy Redshift RIs. We're in the process of moving off Redshift on that team, though, so it's not a good investment, so we've chosen not to action it. There's a lot of different views, and the next one here actually shows, like, we have a view by, we can filter, and we can start to break it out by individual public cloud providers, accounts, resource types. I actually had a slide in here which we pulled at the last minute where you can drill down, you can actually see instance level actions in an account to change. But by the time I'd gone through and redacted email addresses and account numbers and pricing figures, it looked like a Black Ops document that was declassified. There's only like 3 words you could read on it. So it didn't really seem very helpful, so I skipped that. But one of the things I did want to kind of compare and contrast, this is just a couple of my accounts. I can't share the product name, but on the next slide, this is what I believe to be one of our most efficient services in the company. And you can see, while they have a $184,000 a year savings opportunity, it's less than 1% of their spend that's waste. And so the contrast between those two numbers was important for us. Just because it's a big savings opportunity doesn't mean that the team's doing poorly. Just because it's a small savings opportunity doesn't mean the team's doing a good job. Let's talk about kind of lessons learned from this. The first one, I'm a huge fan of the Pareto principle. And what we found, especially in automation, is that the Pareto principle states that you can solve 80% of a problem with 20% of the effort. To solve the remaining 20% of the problem requires 80% of the effort. And what we found in every single automation category we've looked at, there's a bunch of stuff that's easy to get to, and then there is a long tail of edge cases and, messiness. Just ignore that. It's how you'll get results the quickest. On the efficiency automation side, the other things that really stood out to us, automation has been more effective at driving savings than education. And I'm going to out Matthew. Matthew helped create our S3 tiering policy, which we rolled out across the company. He was doing something quickly on one of our accounts. He spun up some buckets. He authored the policy, which we automate. And 2 days later, I get a notification that one of my accounts had an automatic change to it. We're not in compliance with our own S3 policy. And the reality is that it's so much knowledge to keep in your mind to configure these accounts and follow every single best practice. When people are in a hurry, they're just going to miss it. So where you can just automate it for them, it just saves everybody time, and it's going to save you money. The other thing is, it's the boring projects that save us big dollars. Cleaning up unattached EBS volumes has had over a $10 million savings opportunity for our company. And when people think about, saving money, think about like re-architecting, rolling to the latest gen, infrastructure, like these big, fun, meaty projects. Now, the stuff we saved money on, it was like really basic stuff and it's like couch change. Quarters in everybody's couches, across 10,000 accounts, it rolls up and it's a lot of money.
From a scale perspective, having each individual team go out and clean up EBS volumes, they're going to save $1,000 per account. Like, it's just not worth their time.
It's not worth the time. And that's kind of the end call out. It's the simple wins that we saw had the biggest impact and we're able to move quickest on. So focus on simple before you do complex. On the efficiency reporting, I mentioned, I hate the word waste. And the reason why is It creates a narrative, right off the bat from leadership that there's a problem that needs to be solved. And I believe pretty strongly that idle resources in the cloud, they're neither bad nor good, especially they're not bad if you're making a deliberate decision around it. And the example I would give here is, assume you have a product, it has amazing margins, it's selling to everybody, you're capturing the market with it, but it's horribly inefficient. Who cares? Prioritize capturing the market, make a bunch of money, you can come back and you can optimize it later. The complete inverse of that though, a product that is incredibly inefficient but has terrible margins, that doesn't really matter. Maybe you shouldn't even have that product in your portfolio anymore. It's the same reason why I actually didn't like the targets that we set too, because I think it creates a narrative that there's a problem that has to be solved, rather than this being a data point to include in your strategy. The other one, which, I don't know how well I can articulate this. We picked a very dynamic efficiency metric. We do weekly scans of our entire fleet, and we score EC2 utilization, for example, based off of 10 different KPIs. So we have products that, they have hotspots during the season, and their efficiency number gets better, and then they have cooler periods of time where they get, the numbers get worse. And for some reason, people, struggle around this from a reporting perspective. You show a report 1 month, the efficiency number's here, the next month it's down here. Everybody wants to know why it's changed. And so there were some drawbacks of having that number being as kind of dynamic as it is right now. I think that's it. Questions? Comments?
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. How do you decide that something is underutilized in automation? Because it's sometimes reliability, performance, and cost goes hand in hand, and maybe like a 999 latency in e-commerce requires overutilization. How do you figure out that?
Typically, we look at the risk of doing it. So for some things, like that 4-quadrant I kind of talked about, that's kind of how we evaluate those particular scenarios. We are very careful because we know the minute we make a big mistake, we as a team on the automation side are probably in big trouble because we're going to lose that internal trust. So typically, we've been very conservative. If we can take a backup of it, we feel pretty good about automating it. If I'm cleaning up an orphaned load balancer and I'm going to lose the DNS name, I'm not as comfortable deleting that.
We've also very explicitly, we've taken a strategy. So, and it depends on the resource type. For EC2, like I said, we look at 10 different KPIs. Network in and out, disk throughput, disk IOPS, CPU utilization, et cetera. We have taken an approach where basically, I don't know if I should say this. Our goal is that when we show the teams that a resource is idle underutilized, that it's shameful. So we actually look, 5% of the max hourly cycles over a 2-month period. If they are below 10% in every one of those categories, we flag it as a savings opportunity. Because the goal we want to have is when we say, hey, you should look at this, you should right-size it, that the team can't come back and say, well, it's a spiky workload, or we like to run them at 40% so that if we have a capacity event, we're covered from an outage perspective. But there always will be edge cases.
Yeah, every engineer we talk to will have reasons why we're wrong, and we want to make that conversation go away.
And sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong. They're usually wrong because I say so.
We're trying to squeeze in one more question.
So let me move over. The dashboards are fantastic, but it's very easy to ignore data. Do you have to take people by the hand and bring them to the dashboard, or how are you promoting the dashboard? How are you getting people there and taking note and taking action?
That is a great question because this is not Field of Dreams and I'm not Kevin Costner. And the reality is that just because we built it, actually nobody can. So we actually have a whole other initiative. My team that runs the dashboard piece of it, we tend to think of things like a marketing funnel. And so we say, what's the percentage that we can capture? Who's actually interacting with the tool? Have we actually got a conversion from them? And the reality is that those numbers, they're nowhere near they need to be today. And we have a bunch of different strategies. So for example, just in the upcoming week, we're doing a campaign that we're going to launch across all of our offices, where we're doing QR codes that say, know your cloud spend. And if you scan your phone with them, it'll take you to our dashboards and give you some summary views of those. So we have to keep challenging and working through different avenues, especially with how big our business is, to get that engagement. Is there a what? Yes, very much so. And that's more recent. And given the size of the company are with multiple BUs, it's stronger in some places than others.
All right, Ken and Matthew are going to stick around out back for some questions if anyone has any, but that is all we have for time today, so let's send them out with a warm round of applause.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching that session. I'm sitting here in San Diego right after FinOps X. We hope you join us next year here live 2024. In the meantime, please subscribe to the channel and join the community. Get involved, join the summits, get in a working group, and don't forget to get FinOps certified. Because next year here in San Diego for FinOps X, it's going to be twice as big. Come join the party. Come meet your people. Welcome home.